I want to know what you think about getting rid of the federal Department of Education.
Well, Zan, that is a great question. And I always like to kind of go back to the beginning. When we think about public education in our country, the roots actually predate the founding of the United States of America. So, as early as 1647, our Puritan forefathers in Massachusetts, they passed what was called the Old Deluder Satan Act of 1647. I always encourage people just Google it because it's the opening words are so interesting. It begins so that our children can learn to read and read the Bible and not be deluded by our old deluder Satan. We now establish the formation of schools so children can learn to read. And that's really the history of public education. So fast forward a couple hundred of years, there's always been this attempt to have a federal role in education. As early as 1867, Andrew Johnson, who of course was the president, he was Lincoln's running mate, and when Lincoln was assassinated, he became the president. He actually signed into law a bill that created a Department of Education. Now, they had, I think, 4 people working there. Of course, the size and scope of the federal government was minuscule compared to today. But the very next year of 1868, they demoted it to an office of public education. And then we didn't really see a major increase in the role of the federal government until industrialization came. It was Teddy Roosevelt who actually signed into law a bill that gave some federal funds for vocational education. And then you had more and more of this push towards a federal role in education. Of course, after World War II, you had the GIs coming back, the GI Bill, but you didn't have a federal Department of Education. It was just kind of run through other agencies, other departments of making sure of let's give money to our returning soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines.
Okay, so that's interesting. Excuse me for interrupting you, but my dad was a World War II vet, and he went to law school on the GI Bill.
I mean,
And
see, it worked.
it did. It worked. I didn't realize, or I never really thought it through, to know that the Department of Education on a federal level was not there at that time, and it still worked. Dispersing those funds still worked.
In fact, maybe you could say it worked even better. I mean, pretty much everyone agrees the GI Bill is one of the great successes of making sure that
Absolutely.
we treat our servicemen and women and their children very well. But then, fast forward, we had Lyndon B. Johnson, and he gave his great society speeches. He said, we're just going to increase the role of the federal government in many areas. And one of the big reasons was the disparities between low income and high income families, minority families. And that really was the genesis of Carter signing into law in 1979, the law that established the Federal Department of Education, and then it being created as its own cabinet level department in 1980. Interestingly enough, Ronald Reagan, who did many great things, campaigned on abolishing the Federal Department of Education, and he did a lot of things, but he was unable to abolish the U.S. Department of Education.